On December 23, 1969, Willie Nelson was coming home from a Christmas party in Nashville, Tennessee. As he drove up to his house in Ridgetop, he saw the house was on fire. Willie ran in and grabbed a couple of items and then stood back and watched it burn. What he ended up grabbing was a pound of Colombian that he had bought and also a new guitar that he had recently purchased. He said his reasoning for grabbing the smoke: "I was trying to keep the firemen from finding it and turning me over to the police." "Well, what about the guitar?" "Well, I needed the guitar to keep working." "I guess that's true. But a guitar you just bought? I mean, very replaceable." Or was it? Here we are some 54 years later, and that guitar is almost as much of a legend as Willie himself. Maybe Willie was a little more in tune with the universe than even he himself realized back in '69. Because not long after rescuing that guitar, he would up and leave Nashville, where he had made a name and some good money for himself as a top songwriter, and head back west to his home state of Texas, taking that guitar with him. And within a few short years, Willie and that guitar would launch a sound and a musical career that would bring more people and musicians together than anyone could imagine, himself included. Willie was born April 29, 1933 in Abbott, Texas, a small town in between Dallas-Fort Worth and Waco. Willie and his older sister Bobby was raised by their grandparents. He wrote his first poem at 6 years old, and it went like this: "What are you looking at me for? I ain't got nothing to say. If you don't like the looks of me, just look the other way." He would put him a notebook together and keep on writing those poems. He would sit on the piano bench and listen to his sister Bobby play, and after his grandpa bought him a guitar, he would sit with Bobby and pick out tunes. Willie was to play in lots of bands around town starting around age 13, picking guitar and singing. His music style and taste was a wide variety back then, just as it still is today. He says his sister Bobby could read music and she would sit with songbooks playing, with him alongside of her. All the books contained a big variety of songs, and Willie learned them all. But it was his songwriting that would eventually get him to take a step further in the music business. After selling off a couple of his songs, one being Family Bible, which became a hit for Claude Gray, Willie moved to Nashville in 1960. With help from fellow songwriter Hank Cochran, Willie got work as a staff writer for Pamper Music and quickly established himself as one of the most talented songwriters in the business, scoring with huge hits like Crazy with Patsy Cline, Funny How Time Slips Away with Billy Walker, and Hello Walls with Farron Young. His unique singing style, however, with behind-the-beat phrasing vocals, was less appreciated, and Willie eventually found himself tiring of rejection and longing for a place where he could be himself. And that place was Texas. But before we go back there, I want to share what Willie says about his style of singing and playing that laid down all the groundwork for his unique way of delivering songs. His phrasing came from Willie's favorite singer, which is Frank Sinatra. Sinatra had a way of doing that, not near as prominent as Willie, but if you listen close, old Frank sometimes made you think, is he going to get there on time or not? Then we get to Willie and his playing, which of course includes that Martin guitar he pulled from the burning house. Willie says he took a lot of his playing styles and tone from Django Reinhardt. Now, for those of you who don't know Django, he lost use of the ring and little finger on his left hand in an accident. So he was a two-finger player. If you've never heard him play, there are plenty of live YouTube videos out there. But listen to him and you can hear what Willie was hearing. Willie said if Django can do it with 2 fingers, then I should be able to get close with 5. But one more thing was needed, and that was a guitar to get that gypsy jazz sound and get it out on stage loud enough without feedback. Now, Willie had quite a few guitars through the 60s, For years, Fender and Gibson had been giving him Strats and Tellys and 335s and so on, but things changed one night before a gig in Houston in very early 1969. A rep for piano company Baldwin, which had bought out Gretsch in the late rush to become a player in the guitar boom, gave him one of its 800C acoustic electric classical guitars with the Primzatone pickup and a C1 custom amp. Now, Willie, being a devout fan of Django Reinhardt, had taken to emulating the gypsy jazz sound and style, and along with the Baldwin guitar pairing, marketed for its ability to produce a true acoustic tone and being able to get the volume needed on stage with minimal feedback, it fit the bill. But as fate would have it, at a gig one night, a drunk stepped on the Baldwin guitar and pretty much trashed it. So Willie sent it to Shot Jackson in Nashville to see about getting it repaired. But the prognosis was not good. The guitar was dead. But Shot told Willie he had a solution. With only minor modification, he said the Primzatone pickup from the Baldwin would fit on a Martin N20 classical guitar hanging in his shop, enabling Willie to keep using the Baldwin amp through its stereo cord. The guitar was $475, and the installation of the Primzatone was $275, for a total of $750. Willie said he had just paid $750 for a roping horse that day, so if he could pay that for a horse, he could pay that for a guitar. So the Martin guitar, later to be named Trigger, was born. With Trigger and that C1 amp, Willie headed back to Texas. He was tired of Nashville. The reason for that was, although Willie was a very successful songwriter, he also wanted to be a performer. Willie loved to play for people, and still does to this day. And Nashville being so straight and commercial, Willie just couldn't be Willie, and was getting no place fast. He said, "I'd go back to Texas and play all those beer joints where I grew up, and wouldn't have to change a thing. They all liked what I did. So I knew that what I was doing, I could do it forever, whether I pleased everybody in Nashville or not." Willie moved back home to Texas and wrote, sang, and looked the way he wanted. Willie put a band together to fit around the sound him and Trigger created. His sister Bobby played piano, and he had Jody Payne on electric guitar, B. Spears on bass, Mickey Raphael on harmonica, and Paul English on drums. Then off they went to play the music the way Willie heard it. After signing with Atlantic Records, Willie and his band put out 3 albums, Shotgun Willie, Phases and Stages, as well as a gospel album, The Troublemaker. Now these albums did okay at the time, but more importantly, what they did do was establish a sound. And after a changeover to Columbia Records, which gave Willie creative control of his music, the album Red-Headed Stranger was completed. Now the executives at Columbia thought the tapes, when they first heard them, were just demos. But since Willie had complete control, they were released as they were. Very simple and to the point musically, with Willie and Trigger up front, was the sound that Willie wanted. The song Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain was released as a single from the album, and in October 1975, the song became Willie's first #1 hit as a singer. And at the end of the year, it was the 3rd biggest song of 1975 on Billboard Hot Country Singles chart. In addition, the song gained enough airplay on Top 40 radio to reach number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100. In 1975, at the 18th Annual Grammy Awards, Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain won Willie a Grammy for Best Country Vocal Performance. It was his first Grammy out of the 12 he would go on to win during his career. That album, Red-Headed Stranger, in my opinion, was the one that brought that Willie and Trigger sound to the masses. The album was released a few months before Willie's 42nd birthday. Trigger was only 6 years old at the time. But life on the road and Willie's playing style were rough on Trigger, and it didn't take long for age to take away its beauty, but never its sound. Now a little about Trigger here. Trigger is a Martin N20 nylon string classical acoustic with the serial number 242830. This dates the guitar to early 1969, which means it was new when Willie bought it that same year. Now, being as it's a classical guitar, there was no pickguard on it because it was really meant to be played gently with the fingers, which Willie does once in a while, but he also gets carried away quite often, and with his style, he just wore the guitar out and gave it a second sound hole. If you have wondered how he's kept Trigger going all these years, it's because of a guitar luthier in Austin, Texas named Mark Erlewine. When Willie met him years ago, he said, "Just keep my guitar going. As long as it's working, I'll be working." And Mark has done just that. If you'd like to see and hear the details that Mark goes through every year to keep Trigger going, I'm going to put a link in the description box of a video he's done showing in detail what he does to keep this guitar out there and in playing condition. Willie says Trigger has played over 10,000 shows and recording sessions, and there's over 100 signatures on it, though some have been worn away with new ones added. Just a few on there are Ray Benson of Asleep at the Wheel, Roger Miller, Chris Christopherson, Gene Autry, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, lawyers, football coaches, and other friends and associates. The first person to ever sign the guitar was Leon Russell, but only after he asked Willie to sign a guitar of his first, which Willie did, but was going to do it with a felt-tip pen. Leon said, No, use a ballpoint pen here and scratch it in the finish." Willie said, "Why?" Leon said, "Because it'll stay there and be worth more money later on." So Willie did just that. And then he had Leon do the same thing to Trigger. When it comes to letting other people sign Trigger, Willie says, "I know how it felt when Leon asked me to sign his guitar. So I try to pass that feeling along when I meet someone who I think would appreciate it. And Trigger knows I'm not going to hand him over to nobody that's going to hurt him." Willie got himself into a deep hole with the IRS around 1990. They seized up all of his assets and was about to throw him in jail until he worked out a deal with them where he ended up paying them somewhere around $16–17 million. But one thing they didn't get, or couldn't find, was Trigger. And I truly believe if it came right down to it, Willie would have went to jail before Trigger would have been found. But either way, it all worked out. Willie and Trigger made a few records and the debt got paid. Trigger's one of the most photographed guitars there is. Before every show, when Trigger's brought out and set on the stand all tuned up and ready to go, people come down to the front of the stage to get his picture. And then after Willie comes out and straps Trigger on, the photos start up again. One question you always hear is, how much is Trigger worth? I don't think that can be answered with any authority, as something as collectible as that guitar will be worth what someone will pay for it, if it's ever put up for sale. Another question that's always floating around is, what happens if Trigger becomes unplayable and just can't be fixed? Well, we know this much. Mark Erlewine, Trigger's caretaker, said that one time they found another Martin N20 just like Trigger, and it was only a few serial numbers off. So we're talking about the same year and basically the same guitar. Mark set it up exactly like Trigger, and they took it to Willie to try, just in case. Willie never played it or even tried it out. Willie says he figures him and Trigger to check out about the same time in this life. I did hear Willie once say, if Trigger gets to where he can't be fixed or played anymore, then he wouldn't play anymore either. Willie says, when I get through playing, Trigger can go someplace and rest. Willie turned 90 this year, and Trigger 54. Now they both look a little worn down, but still get out and perform for all the fans every now and then. I really do believe when either one of them decides it's time to call it a career, the other will do the same. But one thing for sure, neither one of these legends will ever be forgotten. If you enjoyed this video, I'll put a few more up right here I think you might also enjoy. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe on your way out. That helps the channel grow. And as always, I appreciate y'all and your comments. If you have any Willie and Trigger stories, feel free to share them in the comment section. Thanks for watching.